Am I the asshole for leaving my sister and her husband on the side of the road? I come from a very sex-positive household. My parents taught my sister and I about sex, sexuality, and their non-vanilla lifestyle from a young age. They were very affectionate and touchy with each other in public and didn't, and still don't, seem to care about others' opinions. They lived a very non-conventional lifestyle and weren't afraid to flaunt it. On one hand, my parents never treated sex as a shameful subject, therefore, I received a very comprehensive, inclusive form of sex education. On the other hand, I think I was introduced to many topics at a very young age. In many ways, my sister, Angie, turned out like my parents. She proclaims that she's sex-positive, and has no qualms with openly discussing sex in great detail at every opportunity. She believes that if a person is uncomfortable, they must be a conservative virgin, prude who clearly hates all forms of self-expression. Her words. My wife, Zara, isn't a huge fan of PDA. Other than hand-holding or occasional kisses on the cheek, she isn't comfortable with doing much in public. We're also not the type of people to discuss our sex life with people, much less family. Angie doesn't like Zara. She believes that Zara is too conservative, prudish for our family. She often makes fun of Zara for looking embarrassed when she's discussing, in excruciating detail, about sex. Zara barely says anything, but Angie still manages to make fun of her. I don't speak to Angie much. Recently, Zara's brother passed away. Angie's husband, Bill, knew his partner and wanted to pass on his condolences. Zara, Angie, Bill, and I all wanted to attend his wake. Instead of taking separate cars, Angie suggested that we all go together. To be honest, I was not a huge fan of this idea. It was a 2-hour drive from where we lived to our destination. Also, we were planning on leaving very early so that we could help set up and were planning to leave late. We still managed to do it. At first, everything was alright. Understandably, no one was speaking in the car and it was very quiet in the car. Most people were keeping to themselves or sleeping. Midway through the drive, Angie and Bill start making out in the backseat of our car. When I say, making out, I mean, full-on, making out. They were pushing up against the car door and making all sorts of noises. Zara and I were extremely uncomfortable. I pulled over and started yelling at Angie. I told them that I was disgusted by their behavior and that they were acting like horny little teenagers. Angie said that they were grieving. I yelled at them to get out of my car. At first, they were protesting, but I was so angry and so tired of them already. I told them to find their way home by themselves. My parents think that I went too far with them and that Zara needs to loosen up in order to be a part of this family. Obviously, Angie and Bill are still extremely pissed. Edit. When I initially pulled over, I pulled over into a small petrol station that had a little cafe. Saying, side of the road, was a poor choice of words and I apologize for all the confusion. Not the asshole. Sex positive means valuing consent, communication and being free to make informed choices about your body, without feeling judgment or shame. Nothing about what your sister is doing is sex positive. Continuing to discuss your sex life to someone in great detail, when they have expressed this makes them uncomfortable is not the one. Making out in a car with other people there who are clearly not consenting to that is odd. Sounds like someone needs to go and rewatch, or watch, Tea and Consent. You can also be perfectly sex positive without wanting to be so close to the show that you need a cigarette afterwards. Or a bath. Not the asshole. They may be sex positive but not consent positive. I think Angie's kink might be to make others uncomfortable. It sounds like their parents practiced some form of emotional incest and Angie is continuing that behavior. This 100%. Angie has narc tendencies. I know people throw that word around but this is very narcissistic behavior. Not the asshole. Wait, your wife's brother died. And her in-laws F$C king in her car, on the way to his funeral. Is an expression of their grief. Honey, I have no words. Because I'd never deal with these idiots again. I wouldn't stop you from seeing your family. But they obviously don't care about your wife. Yeah, that's seriously messed up and inconsiderate AF. I would have kicked their disrespectful butts out of the car too. This. I can't even imagine. Your wife is grieving. They know that PDA makes her uncomfortable. On the way your BIL's funeral everyone ought to be trying to make your wife grieve in peace. This is outrageous. And to original poster sister, coming from an older, wilder woman with a sex body count that probably triples hers, lady, you are not sex positive. You either have a fetish or a right down mean. Shame on you. All the YTA or ESH are bat poop crazy. They were in the car with Zara whose brother has died and they are literally on the way to the wake. IDGAF if people want to make out but certain situations are not the time or place. Especially in the car with someone about to say goodbye to their family member who has already told you they aren't comfortable. We harp on about consent but don't seem to grasp that other people don't consent to be spectators. You might want to put spaces between those judgments, like this, YTA or YTA. Otherwise the bot will read it as you casting a vote for them. Jen. Not the asshole. Angie said that they were grieving. Do you know how they say everyone grieves in their own way? Well, this way, it turns out, is incorrect. Seems like the horny teenagers in backseat of family car would be a more of just a common sense no thing did not see the grieving excuse coming. You did not consent to being part of their sexual activities. Not the asshole. I'm sex positive, and I still don't want to talk about sex in depth with family and friends. I can be sex positive and still like my privacy. I also don't want to be subjected to other people's sex lives. You don't consent to your sister making sex moans in your ear, and it doesn't make you a prude to not want that. ETA. People are saying that you're ta if you didn't warn them first, but also this is not the first time you've had this conversation with her if I'm reading this right. She already knows that this is a boundary. This %100 unless I consent to listening to your story or watching you, you are forcing it on me. That isn't sex positive. Not the asshole. Your sister and Bill's behavior was highly inappropriate. There is no way that falls under the definition of sex positive, that's just weird. I wonder if they behave like that with other people or if it was just meant to push your wife's buttons. Seems like a strange grieving process too. It's not a grieving process at all. It's just a thinly veiled lie the sister uses to pull a power play when original poster's wife is at her lowest. It's literally kicking a person when they're down, for the thrill of it. Original poster's sister either has an unhealthy lack of consent of others' kink, I don't know if that has a name, or she is just a sadist out to cause pain. Original poster's wife wanting to establish a healthy boundary made her the target. Not the asshole. This was a pattern of behavior that they knew bothered Zara, and they still couldn't restrain themselves for a couple hours to make her comfortable. I don't know, I kind of think that making Zara uncomfortable was a goal of theirs. I think you are right. They are extremely cruel to someone who lost a sibling. Disgusting behavior. If this isn't a sign to go NC or LC, I don't know what is. There is a fundamental lack of respect in general. Might as well F'd at the brothers' memorial. They knew enough to do that. They know what they are doing and probably getting high of it. Odd question, be spectators to a consensual people but a sibling? Isn't that crossing some weird incest thing? It makes me question how far the parents took their PDA in front of their kids. Obviously consent wasn't part of the lessons the parents, taught. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. There is a difference between being sex positive and forcing people into your sex life. They did the second. Zara is perfectly fine the way she is. Tell them to back off. What they're doing goes against every aspect of sex positive. They're ignoring someone's boundaries. Original poster, since your parents acknowledge what they're into isn't vanilla, remind them that what your sister is doing is forcing your wife into a voyeur role without her safe, sane consent. She's breaking the core values of what they taught her, and using it to sexually harass your wife. Not the asshole. No consent, no sexual activity period. This has nothing to do with being prudish or sex positive. It is unbelievably fucking rude and inappropriate to be full-on sucking face and moaning in the backseat of a car, on the way to a funeral, with the deceased's grieving sister in the front seat. Not the asshole. Jesus tap dancing Christ, what the fuck is wrong with some people? Question mark. I was just about to ask who TF gets horny on the way to a funeral? Is that actually a thing? Sex and funerals do go together. This is a thing. However, consent is also a thing, and original poster and his wife did not consent to be voyeurs. Not the asshole. Anyone who is sex positive knows about consent, and if she's not getting consent to involve you in her exhibitionism, then she's being a sex negative and gets to walk home. Time for Angie to have a lecture on consent. Even if we take away the fact that Op's partner is grieving the loss of her brother and they are currently driving to his wake, who TF wants to watch their sister get busy in the back seat of their car. Gross. Greater than Angie doesn't like Zara. She believes that Zara is too conservative, prudish, for our family. Greater than my parents think that I went too far with them and that Zara needs to loosen up in order to be a part of this family. This comes off like they're trying to have a big ol' family orgy, which is nauseating to say the least. Anyways, there's being sex positive, which is cool, and then there's dry humping each other in the backseat of your brother's car on the way to a wake while the deceased sister is in the passenger seat. Time and place. They can be sex positive without being gross like that, and they can be sex positive without sex being their entire lives and basically the only thing they talk about. Not the asshole. It's like they're making sex their entire personalities. That's kind of pathetic to do with anything, with an extra layer when they know other people are annoyed, embarrassed by it, then an icing of, insert word of your choice, to pretend to be using making out to express grieving in front of someone who was the deceased's immediate family, not just knew him, or whose husband knew him. The real kicker is it doesn't say Bill knew the deceased. Bill knew the deceased's partner and wanted to pass on condolences. Very bold to claim they're grieving, when the deceased sister is right there and they never even knew him. Not the asshole, but your characterization of your parents raising you in a sex-positive way is incorrect. They covered their own kink of inappropriately sexualizing the family by distorting it as education. That's manipulation. This fact leaked out in your post in two ways. 1. That you were exposed to some sexual subjects too early, which means you were unconsenting, and 2. That your sister continues, reflexively, to override consent. Your parents and your sister are not sex positive, which has a whole ethical consent framework, and well into exploitation and sexual predation, getting off on others' discomfort and lack of consent. Their kink is first making you an unconsenting partner or witness to their sexual behavior, then second, shaming you for not consenting. Your sister set up this whole one-car situation expressly to do this to you and or your wife. Hilariously, if you did consent, a lot of the boundary pushing wild stop, because that isn't as fun. I personally always block and NC predators the moment I identify them, so that's what I'd suggest. I was thinking the same thing. This sounds wrong, not sex positive. Not the asshole. It's one thing to be sex positive, and another to be an insensitive asshole that is so self-centered they don't know how to behave. What kind of moron ignores the grief of someone whose family member passed to make out in the back seat because they are grieving over someone who they didn't even know? They knew the dead brother's partner and sister, not the guy themselves, so why are they grieving so hard? Your sister sounds like she either is a narcissist or that she isn't sex positive, but rather a sex addict. If I was your wife though, I would be pissed at you. Why aren't you protecting her better? You made her have a 4-hour, round-trip, car ride with people that constantly bully her while she was grieving a family member? You suck for making that choice, and you need to do better in the future. Otherwise your wife might agree that she doesn't fit into your family as none of you seem strong in the empathy, consideration of others department. I agree. You family has no class or awareness of other people. They may be sex positive but by no means are they acting appropriately. Good for you for standing up for your wife's boundaries. Not the asshole, but next time you are together do better and insist on separate cars. Not the asshole. Everyone grieves in their own way, but seriously going at it on the way to a wake is a new one for me. Lol. The grieving part is killing me. Edit. Literally telling the family members of the man that passed. Please excuse our behavior, we're grieving, OFFS.